Welcome to the Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, the movie's so bad it almost put superhero movies on ice. This is Batman and Robin. Welcome to the Blast Zone.
Welcome to the Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Batman and Robin, which we're talking about today. Very exciting.
Yeah, both of them.
Both Batman and Robin. And Batgirl.
And she didn't even make the title.
You know, Robin didn't make the title in Batman Forever, so maybe it's like you're always one behind.
You got a little catching up to do.
It's a bit of a lag. But aside from that, Ian, it's been a while, man. We haven't talked in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked, but not like face-to-face on camera.
This week, just like this week's movie, I'm not good.
Oh, boy.
As of our taping, we're in a slowly evolving World War III type of scenario unfolding before our eyes. The outlook for the world is a little bit grim. We certainly have our hopes for the best, but it's weird when you start asking yourself questions like, what should a person do if they know these are the last few weeks of life on Earth? I mean, there's always the like, what do you do when you find out the missiles are launched and you're like 15 minutes away? But everybody does that question. I'm more interested in the cinematic, how do the last 14 days play out?
Like a Seeking a Friend for the End of the World scenario, that Steve Carell movie.
I haven't seen any of those movies, but I feel like it is the plot of several.
I don't think it's quite going to be that dramatic, but if these are our last few days on Earth, then I sure am glad we spent 2 hours of them. Well, 4, I guess, since we watched it twice, watching this pile of dog shit of a movie.
The joke is on us.
Yeah. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, though, because first of all, the last time we spoke, I gave a grim warning that if the Bengals lost the Super Bowl, you might not hear from me for a while. And then we took 3 weeks off, but I promise those were unrelated.
Yeah.
It was not my intention to worry anybody, but the Bengals did lose the Super Bowl. It was heartbreaking.
I'm sorry.
Very sad. Yeah, it's all right. It happens. Well, I guess it doesn't happen often because I've never even seen them win a playoff game before this year.
It's kind of special, but that's sports. Your team can do the most amazing thing that they've never done before in your lifetime, and it's still one of your worst days.
Still gut-wrenching.
Yeah, it's still awful for you.
But there is cause for celebration. You reminded me before we got on air. This is the 1-year anniversary of the first Blast Zone episode.
Yay! Happy Blast Day, or I didn't work on a wordplay for that.
No, we just realized it like 30 seconds before we hit air. But yeah, we released our John Carter episode a year ago today. We'll be releasing this a few days later, so it won't be released on the 1-year anniversary, but pretty cool stuff. We made it a year.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
And with bonus episodes, we still have more than 52 episodes.
Yeah.
So we kept an episode a week schedule, even with some missed weeks.
Yeah, that's a lot. You know, they add up pretty quick. The time goes by, the years go by, the pandemics come and go, but we're still here. I mean, so is COVID, but you know.
In a slightly weakened state, maybe, but still here.
That describes us too.
So, Ian, did you happen to watch anything you wanted to talk about before we get into Batman and Robin?
I did. I watched something called The Tinder Swindler.
Oh, I haven't seen this yet. I'm excited to hear about it.
It's almost brand new on Netflix. It was brand new at the point when I watched it. It was kind of the hot thing for a minute on there. It's a documentary. It's about a unscrupulous gentleman on the international Tinder dating scene.
Is there any other kind of gentleman besides unscrupulous?
Unfortunately, doesn't seem like it. So it's this tawdry premise, but the drama is really engrossing. It's really good. The women who have come forward and told their whole story, as painful and embarrassing and bad as it was for them, they really are revealing, and it's gripping to hear them, and gives you a bunch of these holy shit, I can't believe this is real kind of moments, some big time drama, and it's all true, and it's such a postmodern kind of thing, is that it's built out of all this online media. It has all this content in the form of Instagram posts, voicemails, videos, chats, all the actual communication between these real life people was captured and used in the documentary, and it makes it really compelling to see the real relationship laid out.
We're in kind of a high water mark era for schemers and schemers and, you know, just people who are willing to get rich by any means.
Yeah.
It's like the topic of the moment. Although I will say Tinder Swindler is a bit of a rural juror-ass name.
Hard to say.
For a TV show. It's not easy.
I slowed down before I said it. I'm like, wait a minute. Can I even make this come out of my mouth?
Tinder Swindler.
And one of the ladies, maybe the Dutch one, I forgot where they're both from. One of them says the Tinder Swindler repeatedly, but it's cute.
That is funny. No, I'll have to check. I'm like knee deep in Super Pumped and The Dropout and Winning Time, which isn't really about schemers and scammers, but it is like a true documentary. Not documentaries. It's clearly dramatized, but you know what I mean. Like all this kind of pulled from the headlines
True life
stuff.
shit. Yeah.
But what I want to talk about today is not one of those things. What I have for show and tell is a little more topical, given what we're talking about today. I ventured to the magical land of Yonkers, New York, to the Alamo Draft House, and I saw The Batman.
Oh, wow.
I watched The Batman, all 3 hours of it.
Holy shit. I guess you got to go to a good theater if you're going to sit there for 3 hours.
Have some cocktails and some mozzarella sticks,
Nice.
which I did. But yeah, I really liked it. So I'm a Matt Reeves fan. I've enjoyed all his films up to this point. He did Cloverfield, which I'm a big fan of, the original, and 10 Cloverfield Lane, which he produced.
Okay.
He did Let Me In, which was the American remake of Let the Right One In. Both great films.
Yeah, both fun.
And then he did the last 2 Apes movies. He did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, or War for the Planet of the Apes. He did not do Rise.
Okay.
You know what? Those fucking titles are confusing. He did 2 of those 3.
Yeah.
Let's put it like that. He did the 2 best ones. And then he came and did The Batman, which he was clearly inspired by David Fincher quite a bit in this. It's got a real serial killer procedural investigative vibe that just happens to have Batman in it. But at the same time, it's one of the more Batman heavy films we've got, because in Nolan's films, I feel like Batman plays second fiddle to Bruce Wayne a little bit. You get a lot more Wayne than you do Batman in those. And in here, you get very little Bruce Wayne. And when he is on screen, when Robert Pattinson's on screen as Bruce Wayne, he's basically just playing Batman without his mask. Like, he doesn't try to put on that kind of playboy bravado that you've seen other Bruce Waynes do in the past, and which certainly George Clooney did in this week's movie, which is all he did. He never tried to be Batman.
Yeah.
But so it's a different approach. It's very interesting. I keep seeing people describe it as grounded and realistic, but it's very comic booky to me. And the architecture and the way scenes are set up and framed, and you could see things almost being broken down panel by panel if you wanted to picture it as a comic book. The realistic part of it is that there's no superpowers, and the crimes are very recognizable as stuff we've seen the Zodiac Killer do or John Doe from Seven do. There's a lot of those influences on it. So it's a different type of comic book movie, to be sure, but I really liked it.
That sounds cool. I'm a big Pattinson fan. Patton Stan. What do we call ourselves?
Paddingtons. No, wait, that's a different.
A big Marmalade maven. And I'm excited to see him. Of course, I won't see it until 45 days from now or whenever it comes to streaming, but I'll be ready and waiting.
Not only is he great in it, but Paul Dano is excellent in it. And of course, we've got to give a shout out to Zoe Kravitz, who is just great as Catwoman.
I can't wait to see that.
And every character actor that you can imagine is in this movie. Jeffrey Wright is Commissioner Gordon. I wouldn't even call Jeffrey Wright a character actor at this point. I think he's transcended that, but doing a little bit of a better job than Pat Hingle did in his turn as Commissioner Gordon. You've got Colin Farrell in 20 pounds of prosthetics playing the fucking Penguin. He looks nothing like Colin Farrell in this. You take the most handsome man in the world, make him look like an actual penguin. It's pretty impressive. John Turturro pops up. Like, there's everybody in this movie. Peter Sarsgaard is he's on screen for like 3 whole minutes. You're like, you got Peter Sarsgaard out for the day?
Oh, yeah, they're going deep with this, it sounds like.
It's got quite a bench, and I'm sure there will be sequels because it's doing very well. So I'm excited to see where they go in the next installment, or I know they're doing a spin-off HBO Max show about the Penguin, which could be cool. I'm excited to see where this universe goes. And my initial trepidation was that it wasn't different enough from what Nolan did to be worth revisiting, but it strikes a tone that's very much its own.
Nice. I have nothing to add because I'm trying to avoid knowing much about it, but I'm just excited to see it when I get to.
I didn't spoil anything in my review.
No, I think you did a nice job. You talked about some of the tone, but nothing that I didn't want to know.
Perfect. I didn't want to ruin anything for you or for any other listeners that haven't had a chance to go see it yet, because I know getting to the theater is tricky these days.
Now we get to ruin Batman and Robin. I mean, we can't ruin it any more than it's ruined itself.
Yeah, this is not a good movie. What was your familiarity with this movie before the podcast? Did you see it? Do you remember the commercials? Were you a fan of Batman Forever, Batman Returns? Tell me all your Batman movie wants and dreams.
Tell me all your thoughts on God, because I really want to, whatever. That song's probably contemporaneous to this movie.
Tell me all your thoughts on
Batman and Robin.
I was thinking about it. I was turned off by the first couple Batman movies, and I'm not going to say they were bad, but I have a hard time sometimes with Tim Burton's vibe, and I wasn't feeling Batman all that much in his original movie incarnation. So by the time this one came around, I was not excited for Batman movies. I remembered nipples being something that people were talking about. I think it's probably the most memorable thing in this movie. I remembered Arnold's face all glittered up. And other than that, I really did not engage with this film at all.
So even even Batman Forever, which wasn't a Burton production, you weren't really familiar with that one either. You just turned off Batman movies in general.
I think that one just whizzed past me. Like, I think I actually saw the first two Burtons, and then I missed most of the Schumachers.
All right, so Batman and Robin is a very important movie for me in terms of my life, and not for a good reason. This was the first movie I remember seeing and thinking that movies could actually be bad.
Oh no. Your innocence.
Stole my innocence. I think I was 10 years old when this movie came out. And for a little background, I'd seen the 89 Batman on VHS or whatever. We had it at my house. I watched it a lot. I really liked it. Probably watched it far too young. But it's still silly in a lot of places. It's not like a real dark and gritty take on it. But Batman Returns, I didn't like as a kid. It scared me. It's a pretty scary movie even today. Danny DeVito's fucking horrifying in it.
Yeah, he's good.
And Christopher Walken. Yeah, Christopher Walken was also like super evil. I remember being, confused by it and a little afraid of it, which I still am, but now I like it. And then I remember it vividly for my birthday, because I'm a June baby, and Batman Forever came out in June. We went to the movie theater. It was me, my mom, and my sister, and they put me in the theater to see Batman Forever, and they went to see The Bridges of Madison County, which was also playing at that time. And we all had a great time. I was over the moon for Batman Forever. I love that movie. I watched it repeatedly. I had the soundtrack. I sang Kiss from a Rose nonstop. I was just over the moon for Batman. Whether or not that's true today, I will save for later, but it's not.
Okay.
And then, so we kind of repeated it 2 years later. They went to see my best friend's wedding, and I went to see Batman and Robin, and I walked out of the theater like, why am I not happy?
Oh yeah.
I didn't know movies could make me feel like, movies can make you feel sad if they are sad, but Batman and Robin certainly not a sad movie. It just made me sad about how bad it was.
Yeah, it's not the Black Stallion. You're not crying for that reason.
And I just, it stole something from me. And I tried to watch it with friends when it came out on either pay-per-view or home video. I can't remember. One of my friends had it and we sat down to watch it. And I was still like, man, I cannot get into this movie. Like, I hate it. And I didn't watch it again until 2 weeks ago. And it's worse than I remember. But yeah, this movie did something to me as a young man.
It's a real bad movie. It's, we're not a bad movie podcast, as we try to make clear at the top of every show. We're not here to just find the worst movies and talk shit about them. Sometimes the movies that bomb are pretty bad. This is definitely down there on our list, but I would say the saving grace is that it's not a how dare they bad. We had That's My Boy. That's My Boy? I even forgot the name of it.
That is the name of it.
That was like a fuck you bad movie. Like, what the fuck? Get out of here with this shit. This movie is just like, what were they thinking? Like, who were they trying to entertain? And why were they making all these choices? But it's also kind of harmless. It's not insulting people and offending your sensibility.
And we might feel that way because we're not Batman scholars. I can see somebody who really is invested in the character of Batman and is like a longtime comic reader, like a scholar of everything Batman related, being really like offended by this movie. But that's not me and you. I've read Batman comics. I enjoy them. And I'd consider myself a Batman fan. But yeah, he's not in my top 5 favorite comic book characters and never has been. So I've always thought of him as more of a cinematic creation, just because that's how I've consumed my Batman media over the years.
Yeah, I guess because I stopped paying attention to 80s and 90s Batman, my mind was a blank slate, and I absorbed Nolan Batman, which was a pretty cool character and a cool style. And so you can kind of just take that and make that your Batman, and you can be fairly content in life.
All right, I have a hot take.
Okay.
We're talking about Nolan Batman, and I just want to say that I like the Nolan Batman movies. I'm not going to do that hipster take that everyone is doing now, that the Nolan Batman movies are actually bad. That's like a thing going around film Twitter. No, I think the first half of Batman Begins is masterful. Obviously, The Dark Knight is great. I think The Dark Knight Rises is a mess, but it's almost saved by Tom Hardy just going completely insane and being the goofiest villain of all time. But I think the Batman voice in the Nolan Batman movies is almost as bad as anything in this movie.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
It takes me out of the moment every time he does that stupid ass voice. I liked the Batflick solution, which was like a voice modulator built into the suit.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I didn't love the Ben Affleck Batman movies, but I did like Ben Affleck as Batman. And I think putting a voice modulator in that suit just makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So you don't have to talk like a fucking goofball all the time.
Yeah, he's a gadget dude. I get it. Christian Bale has a weird vibe that hasn't always rubbed me the right way. And part of it is probably that sound that he made with his throat.
Yeah, not my favorite, but the movies overall are good. But I feel like they're good in spite of Batman. The things that save those movies are the villains and Bruce Wayne. And then Batman is just kind of there. But we've delayed long enough. Do you want me to talk about how this disaster of a movie actually got made?
Yeah, let's hear how this thing happened.
All right. This is a long one. After Tim Burton's Batman Returns was released in 1992 and made about $150 million less than the 1989 Batman, while also being criticized for being too dark for child audiences, Burton was asked to step down as director for the third installment. Sam Raimi and John McTiernan were both considered to take over, but Warner Brothers eventually chose Joel Schumacher, who'd made a critical and commercial hit for Warner Brothers with The Client and was approved by Burton, to direct the next installment of the franchise. Released in June of 1995, Batman Forever was a commercial hit, making $70 million more than Returns, but it was not without its detractors.
I want a tractor. Chicks dig detractors.
Schumacher favored a more colorful, campy, and childlike take on Gotham, which was a hit with kids and toy companies but alienated some fans of Burton's Nightmare Carnival version of the city. Nonetheless, Warner Brothers was happy with the film's performance and ordered a quick turnaround for the sequel, to be titled Batman and Robin. Val Kilmer declined to return as Batman, officially to make The Saint, but Schumacher has also confirmed he clashed with Kilmer on the set of Forever and was happy to see him go. He cast George Clooney, then mostly known for his star turn on hospital drama ER as Bruce Wayne, while Chris O'Donnell signed on to return as Dick Grayson.
Kawa fucking bunga.
Ed Harris, Anthony Hopkins, and Patrick Stewart were all considered for the role of Mr. Freeze, but Schumacher decided he wanted a true thespian and paid Arnold Schwarzenegger $25 million to say shitty one-liners about cold weather.
I know that this movie stinks because ice melted.
Uma Thurman was cast as Poison Ivy, Alicia Silverstone was chosen as Batgirl, and professional wrestler Jeep Swanson was hired to play large buffoon Bane in one of the greatest examples of character assassination in cinematic history. With a directive from the studio to make the movie even more, quote, toyetic, unquote, production began on the Warner Brothers studio lot in September 1996, and Schumacher worked hard to maintain a campy, lighthearted tone during filming, reportedly telling the cast and crew, "Remember, we're making a cartoon before takes." Filming wrapped in late January of 97 with a final reported budget of $160 million. Warner Brothers would spend $125 million on the marketing and promotion of the film, clearly anticipating a smash hit.
Remember, we're making a flop.
The film was given a release date of June 20th, 1997, and the reviews were not good. Critics hated it, as it currently sits at 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. As Andrew Johnson for Time Out New York wrote, "It's hard to tell who Batman and Robin is intended for. Anyone who knows the character from the comics or the superb animated show on Fox will be alienated. And though Schumacher treats the Adam West version as gospel, that show's campy humor is completely incompatible with these production values."
And apparently completely incompatible with success.
It opened with a respectable $42.8 million, exactly $10 million less than Batman Forever opened with. But while Batman Forever only dropped about 45% in its second week to make $29.2 million, Batman and Robin dropped 63% and only made $15 million its second week. It would close out its box office run with $238.2 million worldwide, firmly establishing itself as both a critical and commercial bomb that would put the future of the Batman franchise in jeopardy until Christopher Nolan would resurrect it in 2005 with Batman Begins.
Yeah, it's quite a legacy. Bury the Batman.
Bury the Bat. I feel like, did you watch Forever ahead of the recording of this?
I watched part of it. I watched like the first 40 minutes or something, and then I lost interest.
That movie's obviously silly and goofy, but it does feel a little more grounded than this. I feel like he took the wrong lesson from Batman Forever doing well and was like, people just want more of that, and even more so.
Yeah, Forever at least has more story shape to it. It spends time with story elements and developing characters. Like Batman and Robin just jumps right in with action like it's an episode of a cheap TV show. It fills in with some story, but the story kind of hangs very limply in the background of it, and it feels like an excuse to put on the tights and light up the lights and fly around on wires.
Not only put on the tights, but put them on and make sure we get a close-up of George Clooney's butt jiggle as he pulls on those rubber pants that I guess Alfred makes for him, which is just, Alfred knit me a rubber codpiece, is just a weird directive to give.
Yeah, that was a weird twist. They revealed that like Alfred is the architect of the codpieces.
Michael Gough, not the most deep character as Alfred. Like we've seen much better takes on Alfred since and before, if you count the animated series. He's just a terribly uncomplicated person in these movies.
Yeah, he very much works in the mold of the cartoon campy Alfred, who's just a stereotypical English butler.
But then, we got Michael Caine as Alfred, which, okay, they give him a little bit of backstory. But then the Alfreds keep getting younger and, frankly, hotter. We had Jeremy Irons as Alfred in the Batflick ones.
Oh, right.
I'd still buy Jeremy Irons as a superhero, and he was playing Alfred. And now we've got Andy Serkis playing Alfred in the new one.
Oh, I did not know that.
Isn't Andy Serkis in like his mid-40s? No, he's probably like almost 60 by this point.
He's older than you think.
I will forever consider him Gollum and be that age, but he's 57.
Yeah, there you go. That was where you ended up after reflecting on it for a minute. Because, yeah, Lord of the Rings goes way back at this point.
But have you seen him pop up in the Marvel movies? He's like a recurring character in a lot of those. He's still fucking jacked. He's not putting the weights down. He's getting after it.
I was going to say, he can still rock that mocap bodysuit.
Yeah, and those things, there's nowhere to hide in those.
A few little white dots. Nothing to hide
You're
behind.
basically just wearing Spanx for all to see. But yeah, so Michael Gough, I believe we're pronouncing that correct. It's Michael Gough, right? Not Michael Gough.
Yeah, sure. It is now.
Fuck it.
Sorry.
I don't know how.
Sorry, Michael.
I'd say we won't talk about him again, but he's an important character in this movie.
There's a lot of questions that will be raised during the course of this.
I don't know. You want to get into the story? Start digging through it, such as it is?
I can see we've got a ton of notes.
Holy shit, we really did add a lot of notes.
This is going to be fun. Let's jump right into it. So a villain named Mr. Freeze is robbing the Gotham Art Museum. So Batman and Robin go out to stop him. They battle Freeze and his minions, but he gets away with an enormous diamond. Meanwhile, in a remote lab, mad scientist Dr. Woodrue creates a toxic super soldier he calls Bane. When Dr. Pamela Isley, a nearly mad botanist working at the same lab, played by Uma Thurman, threatens to derail Woodrue's evil plans, he topples a rack full of toxins on her. But instead of dying, she emerges transformed into the supervillain Poison Ivy. She kills Woodrue and takes Bane to Gotham City with a plan to ask Bruce Wayne for research money. Meanwhile, back at Wayne Manor, Alfred's niece Barbara Wilson shows up unexpectedly, and Bruce lets her stay.
All right, like we said, a lot of questions. As we mentioned, the first image of the film is just close-ups with a little like swishing sound effect of various body parts covered in rubber. We get close-ups of wieners, butts, nipples, abs, you name it. It's all there.
The butts are tight. The cod pieces are bulging in your face. The nipples are protruding. The leather gloves are sliding on suggestively. And it's just all right in your face before anyone says anything. And then people start talking and it gets worse.
Yeah. Well, Joe Schumacher, famously he was a man who enjoyed sex, let's say. He once claimed he slept with over 1,500 men, I think was his number. He's a famously sensual person. He's going to slip some subtext in there. Yeah. Or what's the opposite of just text?
Super text, super sensuality. Yeah.
Yeah, it starts off with this very over-sexualized close-ups of genitalia, and then it just cuts right to Robin being the most annoying piece of shit in the history of the world. What is the line he says here?
They're now suited up. They're waiting for the Batmobile to spin up into action. And he just goes, I want a car. Chicks dig the car.
Which is actually a callback to an equally terrible line from Batman Forever.
Oh.
When Val Kilmer asks Nicole Kidman, it's the car, right? Chicks dig the car. It wasn't good then. It's not good now. Also, then he's got his own cool little motorcycle that probably cost $700,000 to make. And it comes up like out of a coffin? What is this thing doing?
As you mentioned, these are the most toyetic parts of the film. The cars and the motorcycles are very Hot Wheels, but they're almost too over the top for Hot Wheels. Like Hot Wheels is famous for these cars that are from hot rod culture and taken to the next level where everything is glittery purple paint and outrageous bulbous forms and domes of glass and long sweeps of chrome. And they went too far. Like, I think if I was a kid at the time, you were a kid at the time who probably would have been into Hot Wheels, but I would have been like, oh, you know what? These toys are a little too over the top. Can you tone down the car stuff for me? I like something that looks more conventional.
They're like, if you got Hot Wheels of this Batmobile, that's like a fucking shuriken in your hand. Like, it's just so spiky.
It's gonna cut you.
And it's, imagine stepping on one of these fucking things in the middle of the night. Cut your foot open. Everything is just pointy and weirdly sharp. No, thank you. I had a lot of Batman Forever toys. I think I was out of my Batman toy phase by this movie, or this movie pushed me out of it because I didn't want any stupid ass toys.
Yeah.
But you said this movie does open up like it's an episode of a TV show. They get in their respective vehicles and then they're just driving around, and Pat Hingle, giving the most wooden performance as Commissioner Gordon I've ever seen in my life, pops up and goes, Batman, Mr. Freeze has taken hostages, and directs them to, where is the battle that happens?
I think it's Gotham Art Museum.
Yeah.
Is that what they called it? It wasn't like a history museum?
Maybe a history museum because they have the big dinosaurs.
Oh, right. Then it looks like a natural history museum.
But they're having some kind of diamond auction that Mr. Freeze needs to steal these diamonds. So let's talk about Pat Hingle, because he's fucking horrible in this.
He is.
It's the most wooden delivery of a line I've ever heard in a movie. And he was the commissioner in all the other Batmans, I'm pretty sure, before this one. Like him and Michael Gough were the two that kind of stayed in their roles throughout.
What struck me was that he's playing it like a child. He comes on the screen for these short lines, and everything he delivers is though it's like an older man with a childlike brain just going, ooh, Batman, you're like, I can't recreate it. But the thing it reminded me most of in our recent experience was Death to Smoochie, the cousin, the boxer.
Moochie?
He played it like Moochie. He was playing it like the brain-damaged boxer. It was weird.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. He was doing uh-ohs. And why is Commissioner Gordon acting like that? He's supposed to be the smart, buttoned-up police commissioner.
There's one point where he turns to Batman and is like, you let him get away. It's like, you're the fucking police commissioner. Why aren't you doing more? You just let Batman do everything? You still have a job, man.
I couldn't tell if he was the police commissioner, postmaster general, or the surgeon general. He just had so many medals.
He leads a Boy Scout troop, so he was coming from a meeting there. That's why he wasn't ready to catch Mr. Freeze himself. And those were all his badges. He had one for knot tying and one for starting a fire, making s'mores.
Is that a thing, though? I don't know if LA even has a traditional police commissioner like that, but do they dress like generalissimos? Is that?
No, my man is dressed like Fidel Castro on his way to the ball in his finest military regalia. First of all, every police department's different, but I think it's safe to say that there is no police department that has as militarized a fucking outfit as General Patton.
The other thing is, if I'm not mistaken, a police commissioner is a civilian with oversight over the police department. He's not the chief of police. Maybe we're putting too fine a scrutiny on the comic book.
It also, I couldn't help but shake the feeling in this, much like with Final Fantasy The Spirits Within, but it's even more jarring here because it's a live action movie, that everything was dubbed. You know, everyone's dialogue in this movie feels 80 yard to hell because nobody's tone matches the person they're talking to. One person will be like way too laid back and the other will be way too rambunctious. And it feels like they just recorded their lines in a sound booth and had no contact with each other.
Well, they might as well, because especially for the first 20 minutes of the movie, it's mostly this big fight scene against Freeze. And that
fucking sucks and it's so boring.
It's just a big slam bang thing. You couldn't even probably get any dialogue on set. And everyone's line is pretty much a one-liner. It takes a while before there's any dialogue where people actually look at each other and speak to each other. They're mostly just jump up on something and shout a one-liner. And so it's like, yeah, we'll just do that in the booth later.
Robin literally shouts "Cowabunga" at one point, which that's tough.
That's a demoralizing low point in the movie for all of us.
Let's talk about Chris O'Donnell. He was not good in Batman Forever. He is famous for his doing laundry with karate. This is the best way I could describe it. He's doing laundry, but he's flipping around his shirts and stuff like they're nunchucks. And he's got a broom handle. He's picking stuff off the ground and spinning it. It's a very bad scene. It's very goofy. No. But they were they watched that scene and they were like, okay, let's make that the whole movie for him. He's just going to be annoying and childish and just a real killjoy and also horny for a lot of it. He's very horny.
Yeah. Oh, so horny. And it just in a icky way.
Yeah. But the problem is Chris O'Donnell was 27 when he filmed this. He looks 35 and he's acting like he's 16.
He's a very masculine dude, big square head, solid jaw. He does not look like a petulant little child.
Square. He's also got these big sideburns, which I thought was a weird choice that make him look older. His hair goes down below his ear. That counts as a sideburn in my opinion.
Yeah, shades of a Chris Evans-y kind of a look, right? That's what
I thought. Even Jason Priestley came to mind, given the time period.
Jason Priestley is most likely the inspiration for that.
He's not Jason Priestley, though. He's not that handsome.
No, but Jason Priestley at least was a man of a slighter build that would have made a more realistic young.
Fuck that, yeah. Let's retcon this and cast Jason Priestley as Robin in 95 for Batman Forever. Yeah. I'd see that movie. And you gotta suspend disbelief with the whole secret identity thing, especially this movie, which takes no care when addressing the fact that, hypothetically, I guess they still have to protect their secret identities. But Robin's costume is hilariously bad at hiding his identity.
There's nothing.
It's just a small Zorro mask over his face that will never not bother me.
But you know why that didn't bother me? Because I assumed, based on the vibe I'm getting, that Dick Grayson has no life outside of that mansion. He does not exist in the world. Bruce Wayne goes out in the world and he has his businesses and his research institutes and stuff. But Dick Grayson is just a weird, overgrown child that's stuck playing with motorcycles in Bruce Wayne's basement. And so who the fuck cares?
Yeah, true. Oh my God, is that Dick Grayson? He was a carny before this too. Yeah, so he probably doesn't even have a social security card. He's probably completely off the grid.
He's a mystery man and he likes it that way, except it's hard to get the chicks unless they come knocking on your door and climbing up the side of the building.
Even then, it's hard to get them if you are an idiot, which he definitely is. So then we get our first glimpse of Arnold as Mr. Freeze. I'd say he seems to be having fun, but I don't even know.
Yeah, he's working
He didn't
hard.
do anything for me, even as a campy thing. I wasn't vibing with him in this movie.
He's yelling the lines as hard as he can. He's glittering. His dome is shining. I like that part. Just the close-ups of his face when you see the detail of every speck of glitter. That was maybe one of my things I could point to as something I enjoyed in this movie. But yeah, the lines are hard to take. They forgot to write them. Someone just said, brainstorm me 50 cold related lines, and then they just put them in the script at random, hardly related to what's going on at the moment.
They're not good one-liners. They're not clever. They're
No.
not memorable. They're memorable for how bad they are, but they're
Yeah.
not something like you'd ever want to say.
Right.
First of all, the Ice Age didn't even kill the dinosaurs. That's completely fictitious.
Yeah, come on.
The Ice Age was
man.
way later. Just reinforcing my theory that Akiva Goldsman is very bad at his job.
Yeah. Okay, so the Freeze character. This is one of my main problems with it. If you go, we're going over the top. This guy shouts out fucking ice-related wordplay constantly. Doesn't matter if it makes sense at all.
He's got a
to
hockey team of thugs as his like goons.
He's got a hockey team and he says weird, crazy stuff all the time. But yet, like, how do you reconcile that with who he's supposed to be? He's this brilliant Nobel-winning scientist whose wife was taken from him from this incurable disease. And then he had this accident that's cursed him and he's lost his mind in the depths of his grief trying to cure his wife's disease. But how do you reconcile that with the guy who wears a glittering smoking jacket with a cravat and just says the stupidest shit that comes to his head constantly?
Well, you don't. And the problem is, and I'll tell you exactly how this happened, is there was a very critically acclaimed story arc on Batman the Animated Series about Mr. Freeze that mimicked those same basic story beats about his wife getting sick, and he's doing all this to try to fund his research to take care of her and hopefully get her. And they were like, people really like that. Let's put that in there. But then Mr. Freeze is not like a tragic, complicated figure in this movie. He's literally shouting things like, kill the heroes.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to feel like he's, a conflicted person who's only doing this to save his wife when he's yelling at things like kill the heroes? It doesn't work. It does not work. And then you have Vivica A. Fox, wildly overqualified, but she's just like hanging around humping his leg like a horny cat. And like, why is she even there if you're so devoted to your wife?
Well, that was another non sequitur. And let's come to the biggest non sequitur. The guy's literal name is Dr. something Freeze, F-R-I-E-S. And he
Right.
becomes a superhero and he's Mr. Freeze. Why isn't he Dr. Freeze in the frickin' first place?
He lost his license, man. They took it away from him.
Oh, you're right. No, my
He can't
bad.
practice medicine anymore. Was he a PhD or an MD? I think he was both, right?
It's totally logical. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I missed that.
He doesn't deserve to be doctor until he can heal his wife. But yeah, so they clearly were trying to take composite parts from better stories and throw them in here, but with no care given to how it would match tonally. And that's why it doesn't work. But then let's talk about him escaping in a rocket, because I
Yeah.
have some questions about this. He escapes in a rocket. He needs diamonds to power his gadgetry, right? That's
Yeah.
why he's doing all this. How much did that fucking rocket cost, man? You probably could have funded your gadgetry and your research if you didn't spend what I can only imagine is hundreds of millions of dollars building functional spacecraft.
You could add a nice car and a bunch of diamonds. Instead,
Yeah.
he's got a weird ass. It's not even a nice rocket.
It's a dick. It's a penis rocket, let's be honest. Well, all rockets are phallic in nature, but this one more so.
This one's like old timey. It's just like hollow in the middle, and there's some big valves that you turn.
And Batman's in there getting shot to space. And then Robin shows up and Batman's annoyed to see him, which is an interesting reaction.
Yeah.
Their whole dynamic in this movie is like a weird, abusive, older man, asshole, young gun. Every time they interacted with each other in this movie, I hated it.
You could see where they're going, but yeah, it doesn't click. Batman's still literally stuck there with his hands frozen like he's going to die. And he spends 3 minutes scolding Robin. And it gets dumber. Then they escape from the rocket and then the cowabunga happens.
Yeah, they're just surfing in the sky with a heavy metal door.
The doors, they take the doors off the rocket, which are the kind that sort of pop off when you unscrew the big round thing in the middle. What do you call that?
What do you mean the kind that do that? Is that really a thing? I feel like that's made up for this movie.
They're like hatches. That's what I'm saying. So the hatches pop off and they're like, oh, giant steel hatches. Well, it just so happens we're falling to the earth. But if you jump on top of a giant steel door, everyone knows you can float lightly down. So
if you add 200 pounds to your weight, it will make you fall slower and safely.
it works.
It's bad advice, people. But they're falling for like 3.5 minutes, and they're falling in between skyscrapers for 3 of those 3.5 minutes. How tall are these fucking buildings? There's got to be like 40,000 feet tall, and there's
Yeah.
catwalks connecting them at like 10,000 feet with no railings. Is this like the Death Star? What is this shit?
it is over the top. Well, you don't need railings when you have enormous, heavily muscled, naked male statues holding every single piece of architecture up.
God bless you, Joel Schumacher.
Quite secure at that point.
Yeah, I was just like, why are there catwalks? Like, they're still 10,000 feet in the air based on, how long they're falling for after this.
Well, they needed some rails to grind on, so there needed to be something there.
For reference, I think the tallest building in the world is in Dubai, and it's 2,000 feet tall. Let's see.
And they don't let you surf down it.
2,700 feet tall. So
Okay.
these buildings have to be at least 10 times that size for how long they fall
Yeah.
next to them. And then we've got Uma Thurman popping up as Poison Ivy. I will say, I dug it. I don't know. I was feeling it.
Uma has undeniable charm. She's gorgeous. She is charming.
She's funny.
Before her transformation, she is this funny nerd, and then she gains a posh mid-Atlantic accent when she is poisoned, as toxins will do to you.
She's great. I hesitate to say great. She knows what movie she's in, and
Yeah.
she's having fun with it. She probably has the most fun of anyone in this movie because she could not give a shit about this movie, and that is the correct tone to take. But
Yeah, sometimes you see fine actors in children's movies or children's shows, and you see them really invest themselves in it and bring some love and joy to the role. And that's what I think she's doing. And it's still ridiculous, but there's some heart behind what she's doing. Whereas the rest of the actors are just confused about why Schumacher is yelling at them to be more buffoonish.
yeah, a lot of them knew they were making a turkey during it. We'll get into that a little bit after we go through the story. But yeah, she seems like she was on board and just was like, fuck it, I'm going to ride this wave and see what happens. And I guess we got to talk about Bane.
Yeah, Bane is a case where if you have any attachment to the lore and where he really comes from, I could see where you could be very disappointed in this very cartoonish big turnoff of a character.
He's supposed to be Batman's most intelligent and most physically powerful enemy. And they clearly took their cue from the physically powerful part and ignored
Yes.
the rest here. The Tom Hardy Bane was a nice reclamation for the character after this because I was a big Bane fan as a little kid because he's got a cool mask, got big muscles. He looks like a pro wrestler, but he's like clever and he breaks Batman's back at one point in the comic books. And you're like, that's cool. And then when I saw this movie, I was very disappointed. He is just a parrot, I believe. He repeats the last word of whatever anybody says to him. This whole scene where he gets transformed into Bane from whatever little weasel he was before is strange. I don't understand the function of the mask because he has tubes in his head before they put the mask on.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the mask is not delivering the poison into him. It's just covering up the fact that it's hard to do CGI in 1997.
Yeah, or the prosthetics would have been prohibitively expensive because they already spent, $10 million on Arnold's outfit. So when they put the mask on him, just a nothing character, though. Could have been any nameless henchman. It's actually worse that it is Bane and not just a random person.
It's worse because the movie's so packed with villain origin stories. You're like, okay, too much, too many villains, too many origins. Bane and Ivy have their origin story overlapping. They're in the same 5-minute stretch. And nowadays we talk about in the modern Batman era, it's like, oh, we've seen Batman's origin too many times. Stop showing me the alley and the holdup and the pearls falling off Mrs. Wayne's neck. But at this era, it's like, stop showing me the origin of villains. Just tell me something about it. But don't spend half the movie just originating villains around me. It's too much.
Little fun fact about the actor who plays Scrawny Bane, Michael Reed McKay. He is Sloth in 7, the guy who's on his bed
Oh, shit.
and wakes up suddenly.
Yeah, that was scary as shit.
That fucked me up, man. I fucking, I cover my eyes with my fingers when I watch 7, and 2 years later, he's doing this.
Oh, wow.
Job's a job. I get it. It's still a bummer. But yeah, everything about Bane sucks. I don't feel the need to talk about him much more. We had to address him a little bit. And then if this movie didn't have enough going on already, now we get the whole Alfred is dying subplot and his mysterious brother that, unless I missed something, what is the point of this?
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's going to be a whole Alfred story. And he's like pulling up photos and he's, oh, this is my brother. I can't locate him. This is where he was last seen. I'm like, oh, this is going to come around at the end. We're going to find out that the brother is really connected to something else in this. And then it evaporates. Like the brother is forgotten. I don't even know what happens.
I don't think anything happens. I don't think it's ever addressed.
He ends up giving Barbara something that is supposedly for the brother. When you find my brother, give him this. It's a secret thing, but don't open it. And she immediately goes up to her bedroom and opens it. So it was kind of a device for that. But what a red herring of a device. Just fucking leave something on the table.
Roundabout way to get where you're going.
Yeah,
walk around the block 5 times for no reason to resolve this stupid ass subplot.
She could have found that in his jacket pocket. Like it didn't have to be a whole story about a missing mystery brother. Like we told us, oh, he was last seen as the head butler to the whatever. And I thought he was coming in the third act and going to change the story, but nothing.
Wilford Pennyworth, who would he be played by in 1997? Anthony Hopkins, maybe. They wanted him in the movie already.
Yes, that would have been nice.
Mr. Freeze. Can you imagine Anthony Hopkins delivering these lines? They gave Arnold? No, you can't. They got Tommy Lee Jones to be Two-Face. I feel like that's almost on par with that.
Yeah, he brought some energy to that, so good for him.
Sure did. And then lastly, we get Barbara, played by Alicia Silverstone. She was kind of the Hollywood it girl at the time, obviously coming off Clueless, which was a huge hit, and rightfully so. It's a great movie. What was some other stuff she'd done? She had done The Crush, right? Yeah, in 93. The Crush. And then she did this, and it killed her career for a little while. She's pretty bad in this.
It's a thankless part, but yeah, she does not salvage it.
And there was some controversy around her appearance, I guess, around this time.
Yeah.
I'm reticent to even remark upon it, but somehow she was body shamed for being overweight when this movie was being shot, which is absurd to me and certainly uncool. If we have any problems with her performance, it has nothing to do with that.
No.
But Joel Schumacher was, by all accounts, a very nice man, and he stood up for her pretty vigorously around this time, which was nice to see.
That was good to see. The body shaming was very unfair and unpleasant, just a totally unnecessary part of the story. Apparently it affected her quite profoundly and took her a little while to dig herself back out of it and decide she wanted to continue being an actress, but she did.
Yeah, she's quite busy these days, actually. When I was researching this, she's working on quite a bit, which is good to see. She's staying busy. And all right, you ready to walk through the second part of this movie?
Yeah, tell me what happens next.
Oh boy. To lure out Freeze, Bruce stages a charity auction featuring more enormous diamonds. But Poison Ivy crashes the party and seduces everyone with pheromone dust, including Batman and Robin. Then Freeze shows up and steals the diamonds from Ivy, but Batman chases him down and captures him. Later, Barbara sneaks off with one of Bruce's motorcycles, and Dick finds out she's been competing in underground street races hosted by Coolio. To raise money. Sorry. There's like a fun little fact about Coolio in this movie, too, that I will tell you at the end of this. To raise money for her Uncle Alfred's treatment for the rare disease, which he's been keeping secret. Ivy and Bane break Freeze out of jail, then she faces off with Batman and Robin at Freeze's lair. Ivy drives a wedge between the dynamic duo by seducing Robin with more pheromones. Then she pulls the plug on the suspended animation chamber holding Freeze's beloved wife, but she blames it on Batman, so Freeze vows revenge on Gotham and all of humanity. So, what got me laughing about Coolio is apparently he's playing who would eventually become the Scarecrow in a fifth Batman movie that Joel Schumacher wanted to make. He wanted to cast Coolio. I don't know if he'd be playing Dr. Jonathan Crane. Somehow, I would say like a psychologist moonlighting as a street racer organizer is like a strange beat.
Yeah, weird place to start him out.
We might be working with some shifting origin stories in that case. But yeah, he wanted Coolio to come back as the Scarecrow in a fifth movie called like Batman Infinite, I think.
And no shade on Coolio. He actually holds it down in that street racing scene. He's the most legit thing about that whole fucking scene. It is the most over the top stupid thing. It's like, it kind of presages Space Jam 2. There's these weird random sets of either fans or competitors. Some of them are dressed like Droogs from Clockwork Orange. Some of them are dressed in weird day-glow wigs, which is a recurring thing.
I think I saw the Warriors in there.
Yeah, the Baseball Furies were on their way back from Coney Island. It's real weird in a spooky, like goofiest way. And then the racing is so...
Yeah, the whole race thing is very weird. I don't know why they lay their bikes down at the end because there's like a little line of fire in the road. I don't understand the correlation there. Everything about it is strange, but you're right. Coolio is probably the best part of that whole sequence.
And he has one line. It's like $5 to get in. I forgot what he says. He doesn't even say anything.
It's nothing like notable. Yeah, he just delivers it well. And he's got an interesting look. He always did. He would have been an asset to certain movies at this time, but he's unfortunately misused and his acting career never quite took off.
Like, what did we learn from this? I guess this is how we learn that Barbara is not an innocent girl from a prep school. She has a tough side and a very capable side, and that she's fucking going out and winning motorcycle races in a pseudo post-apocalyptic scenario.
Yeah, it's like the secret badass trope, which is a very popular one. It hits that note for me.
But yeah, these gangs, my little note was that the gangs in the underground racing scene make the Golden Lords from Meteor Man look gritty and realistic by comparison. I mean, these guys are wearing just like bad wigs. And okay, it's one thing if your thing is Dayglow wigs and Dayglow makeup. Okay, that's a spiky, weird wig and you're not supposed to believe it's hair. But other people are wearing blonde wigs and brown-haired wigs, but they're also the worst wigs you've ever seen. So what is with wigs and underground motorcycle racing?
I shudder to think of the amount of cocaine that Joel Schumacher was consuming on set filming this movie and just coming up with these strange associations. Oh, they're motorcycle racers, wigs. You know, whatever you say, Joel.
Some of them are greasers from the movie Grease, and they got leather jackets and pompadours.
I will say, I know you didn't like them, but speaking of Dayglow gangs, there's a gang that Bane and Ivy chase out of what she wants to be her new lair, and they have these weird orange glowing eyes. I thought at least the eyes looked pretty cool in that scene.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. They looked scary and cool. They were a treat visually. They were neat to see. But also, what the fuck is Gotham City? Like, you go into an empty, what was it, a bathhouse that she took over? A Turkish bath?
I think it was a bathhouse, yeah.
And there's just guys that are in full makeup. Like, they've got matching Dayglow contact lenses in and spiky hair and war paint. It's like, what were they doing in there? They were just hanging out on couches wearing this makeup.
That's part of being in a gang. You know, you spend 6 hours every morning in the makeup chair. You just go hang out with your buddies in an old bathhouse.
Well,
gang life sounds awesome. I don't know.
Until Bane comes in and throws you out the front door. Get out of here, boys.
Yeah, I was surprised there wasn't like a woo 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 like sound effect when they threw him like a Three Stooges thing. So did I hear this correctly? I rewound several times. The diamond that Bruce is trying to use to lure out Mr. Freeze, is that called the Heart of Isis?
Well, they were ahead of their time. When I was a kid, Isis was a name from mythology that was freely used to evoke exotic and Middle Eastern mythology. And then some dumbasses came along and spoiled it for the rest of eternity. But it used to be just if you wanted to come up with something that sounded vaguely Egyptian and exotic, you use that name Isis.
These days, it would be like the Heart of Anubis or something. The Heart of Isis has not aged well. So they just say the Heart of Isis. It's like, you should steal that. Yeah, take their heart away. They shouldn't have that. They don't need diamonds. That's just more funding for them.
Yeah, why does Bruce have that?
Yeah, what kind of Middle Eastern shenanigans was Bruce Wayne getting up to? He has the Heart of Isis in his possession. We got to talk about Gossip Gertie for a hot second, because I fucking hate this character. You know who I mean when I say Gossip Gertie, right?
I think so. It didn't fully sink in, but there is somebody who keeps popping up and interviewing people on camera.
She's the one who's like, in this city, Batman and Robin protect us. She's supposed to be one of the good guys, but she's just like a real asshole to everybody. And yeah, that's all I had to say about her. She's terrible. I hate that fucking character. She was in Batman Forever as well.
Is she the one that asks Bruce in public, Bruce, are you going to tie the knot? You've been going out with your girlfriend for so long. Are you going to tie the knot? And then Clooney has a lot of clunkers in this. Maybe his worst line in the movie. He goes, marriage, marriage, and it's like, whoa, what was that delivery, dude? Like, to me, it was a child's idea of what grownups would say if they're asked, are you going to marry your girlfriend? But it's literally this rhythm that, like, was that edited together in post like that?
I think almost everything was. They did not put a lot of thought behind the dialogue and line deliveries in this movie. But yeah, that did stand out as probably his worst delivery. It's hard to make George Clooney, like, what's the opposite of suave? Wouldn't I guess?
Yeah, I know. He's the guy, like, you can picture, you're like, okay, I've cast George Clooney in a scene where he plays a bachelor who's been dating his girlfriend for years, and he's just been put on the spot about tying the knot. Go, George Clooney. And he's going to give you the most subtly embarrassed, but yet trying to stay charming and cool. Like, he's going to nail that, right? 9 out of 10 times. And this time, he flips you on your head and gives you this most awkward line you've ever heard.
He was still early on in his ascension to the A-list, so he hadn't quite figured that out yet. But also, the movie seems to be just doing away with Chase Meridian. Like, when Batman Forever ends, Bruce Wayne and Chase Meridian, played by Nicole Kidman, are very much in love and together.
Oh, okay.
And then the movie just makes no comment on it at all.
Yeah, he is in a long-term relationship with, what's her name, the supermodel in this one?
Elle Macpherson.
McPherson.
So is he two-timing, or are they trying to say this isn't the same Batman, even though the Robin and Alfred is the same and Commissioner Gordon's the same? Like, it's all very confusing, the timeline of these movies.
Yeah.
I guess we shouldn't dwell on that. It's not a big deal. But, you know, the end of Batman Forever, you feel like these two crazy kids are going to make it.
I know,
and they don't.
That would have been something to bring over, like some built-in story instead of starting with Commissioner Gordon. Go to art museum, fight bad guy.
Yeah, that's a missed opportunity. So the McGregor syndrome storyline with Alfred really kicks into high gear here. We find out he's dying, and Bruce is known, right? Is the vibe we get?
That's a good question. Because when I heard it, I almost read it as Bruce just found out, but he's the kind of asshole who acts like he always knows everything anyway. So he just like, yeah, he's dying. Of course, I knew that.
He's got stage 1 McGregor's disease, but it's already fatal. So like, why would you even rank it in stages then if stage 1 is
the
fatal anyway?
Yeah, the doctor who's also playing a childish doctor in the mold of Commissioner Gordon is like, he has stage 1. I don't know. Maybe we just get him a pillow. And like, he's dying. But yeah, to make the particulars of the script logic work, they had to go, Alfred's in stage 1, but this is it. He's a goner. And meanwhile, the storyline is that Freeze already cured stage 1 years ago, and his wife has stage 3. He's working on 2 stages later.
This is so fucking stupid.
Yet she's still alive because he kept her in suspended animation. But Alfred's a goner.
Yes, stage 1 cancer. There's nothing we could do do for you.
There's nothing we can do. Just try to keep him comfortable. Oh, shit. Giving up pretty
It's just
fast.
like, it's stage 1 skin cancer. I think you just cut it off and I'll be fine. Poor Alfred. But like these side storylines just don't add anything to it, and they take away from it if what you're trying to do is appeal to kids, like
Yes.
just make a dumb, stupid action movie, and some dumb, stupid kids will enjoy that. But then you needlessly complicate it with all this stuff because you need to feel like you have branching storylines and depth to the characters, but you don't spend any time doing the work on these side storylines. They're just there taking up space and kind of killing the vibe, to be honest.
Yeah, they do. And it's raising that big question. We've seen it before. And Meteor Man was one of those movies that's like when filmmakers aren't quite sure who they're making it for. It's like you put something of everything. Some of it's harsh and tough, and some of it's totally juvenile. And it's like, why would kids care about Alfred dying of cancer and whether Bruce is going to commit to his long-term girlfriend?
They're going to tie the knot. I sure hope so. Can't wait to get my Elle McPherson action figure.
Oh, boy. Can we just loop around? Because we've now established how dumb this movie is. And occasionally it has these little moments of self-awareness or something pops up and grabs your attention. And one of them happens at the end of the street race scene that we talked about. It ends with this awful joke. Dick Grayson reaches out and nabs Barbara as she goes off the edge of one of the 40,000 foot catwalks in Gotham City, as you mentioned. She's swinging by a thread, but he's holding on to her. And he goes, "So this is where you hang out." And for a tiny moment, the movie acknowledges its own awfulness because it shows her face and then it cuts to him and then it cuts back to her and she's making this disgusted face and it stays on her for 4 extra seconds and she just goes, like at his joke and groans and makes this face like she's just as sickened as we are at the terrible jokes. And I genuinely laughed at that moment because like, holy shit, she just let us know how she really feels.
I hope that wasn't in the script. I hope Alicia Silverstone got a little payback and just threw that in there. Because Chris O'Donnell in this movie is the fucking worst, let's be honest. If I was opposite him in a scene, I'd want to react like that too.
Yeah, no, it's somebody I can relate to for a second. She is fucking sick of this kid.
I don't think she has one good line delivery in this entire movie, though. But she does some of my favorite work in the history of cinema in the third section of the movie. So will you please walk us through the synopsis so I can shout out some of the greatest stuff I've ever seen on screen?
Here it comes. We're going to wrap it all up. So Ivy lures Robin to her lair, and it looks like she's going to kill him with a poison kiss. But he's foiled her by wearing rubber lips. Still, she gets the better of Batman and Robin until, thanks to Alfred's help, Barbara arrives as the newly minted Batgirl and saves the day. Meanwhile, Freeze has commandeered the fancy new telescope at Gotham Observatory and turned it into a giant freeze ray to ice the whole city. With only 11 minutes to thaw all of Gotham, Batman and Robin and Batgirl fight off Freeze and Bane, and rig up some satellites to reflect warm sun onto the city. Batman convinces the defeated Freeze to give him the cure for Alfred's disease, and in return, he promises to let Freeze continue to work on curing his wife from jail. Alfred is all better, and Bruce, Dick, and Barbara join hands and agree to be partners.
You just reminded me there's 2 things in this section that I really love. First, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the history of cinema, I'm not exaggerating, is Barbara trying to guess Alfred's password by just typing random words into the computer.
Oh, yes.
She's like, Alfred. Yeah, he's gonna make his password, his first fucking name. And she's like, England. Wayne? Scotch tape. I don't know.
It's almost like a montage because they cut away from her and they cut back and she's still guessing words. And you're like,
we don't know how many words she went through before she landed on the right one. Just, handkerchief.
Holy shit. Computers were so unsophisticated. What a simpler time this was where you could just sit there and keep typing short words into a password thing endlessly.
Cumberbund. I would have, if the movie was like 90 minutes of that, I would be happy just watching them come up with words for her to type in. What does it end up being too? It's Pam or something?
It ends up being Peg, which is
Peg,
her mom's nickname that only Alfred called her. Is that who that was? Margaret?
Yeah.
Because she guesses Margaret, of course, before, and then she remembers, oh, he called her Peg.
I would just love to see her like disheveled. She hasn't slept in days. She's got the dictionary open in front of her. She's typing a word. She's like 40 pages into the dictionary. She's got weeks to go. But yeah, it ends up being Peg. But then my other favorite scene is Robin, who we learned in Batman Forever when he's doing his laundry, is a great martial artist. He foils Poison Ivy by putting on rubber lips, so when she kisses him, he's not seduced by her. But then he pulls him off, and Poison Ivy, who Uma Thurman can't weigh more than 110 pounds, just fucking shoves him in the water. He's stuck in there forever.
Done, yeah. She defeats him instantly.
She just stands up and pushes him backwards into the water, and he's like, whoa! And he falls into the water. How is that how you're going to resolve this? So he outsmarts outsmarts her and she just overpowers him physically. He was a carny acrobat. Do you know how fucking strong those people are?
Yeah. No, I don't, but I can imagine. But he used up all his strength pulling off the rubber lips dramatically, and then he was tired
He's
out.
spent. Yeah. All his blood is rushing to his wiener, so he's very lightheaded, dizzy, he can fall easily. And she knew that, and she took advantage of it, so she's a good tactician.
Thank God his codpiece was very spacious so that he did not run out of room down there.
This is the most anyone's talked about Chris O'Donnell's wiener, probably ever. And that includes Chris O'Donnell.
What do we do with these people?
The Bruce, it's me, Barbara. Like, you're wearing a very small mask and you have long blonde hair. Everyone knew it was you.
And she's wearing like his kind of, like, who else could have designed a bat outfit made out of the same shit as his bat outfit?
He's not a very good detective in this movie for being the world's greatest detective. And then we get the Batgirl isn't very PC joke, which fucking sucks. And was also in the trailer. Like, really, you're like, that's the best joke we have. We're going to put that in all the trailers. What about Bat Person or Bat Woman? Shut the fuck up. I hate this movie.
I couldn't even register that sequence of the lines. It was like from another era. It didn't make sense to me.
Well, this also, you're so fatigued by this point because this movie's long as shit. So I feel like blockbuster movies were not this long back in 1997, but this one managed to be over 2 hours long, which is a fucking travesty.
Yeah, for something that's such a slam bang, just make the slam bang movie, cut out the death parts, cut out the cancer story.
If you really want to keep all that stuff, you can, but like the action scenes in this movie all go on for like 10 minutes too long. And because they're not well shot or interesting, you're just fatigued by the end of them all.
No, they're so cartoonish. And like, there's obviously a ton of money spent on everything in this, except that in the middle of it is Mr. Freeze's freeze ray, which looks like a hand-drawn cartoon on top of a live action thing. Like, it just falls apart in so many ways.
And then we just let this literal child who flunked out of college or dropped out control this weapon, this heat ray that probably has the potential to destroy the world, right? In short order.
It's pretty powerful. It's pretty amazing. I didn't know they could do that.
They can't. But, that just seems irresponsible, I feel. And how does she know when she's shot enough sun at something to unfreeze it but not melt it? You know?
When the bulldog starts running around again and you know that everything's good.
Well, if she just held that trigger like a second too long, that would have been a totally different movie.
Don't she and Robin like argue for a minute about who's the better computer expert?
Yes. Robin, the carnival acrobat, is apparently a computer whiz now, 2 years after being adopted. I'm sorry, we have to acknowledge his background if we're going to, make any narrative sense of what's going on here. So I would trust her over him, to be sure, but I don't trust either of them very much.
And speaking of Barbara's moments of total awkwardness and terrible lines, pretty much one of the last things she says in the movie, and I should have written it down, is they're all like, okay, now we're partners because we all know how to fight crime. And she goes, well, what about Poison Ivy? I got her by myself. I did that. It's like a line from The Room. It's so,
I did not.
It's one of those. Yeah, she literally like repeats this half of a sentence twice. But I fought a Poison Ivy myself. I did that. I'm like, what is happening? Why are you talking like that? There's lines like that just shake you to your core. They're so bad.
If Batman and Robin was being released next week, they would take your quote and just be like, have a little dash, be like, shakes you to your core. Ian Dukes, Glass Zone.
I would be pretty flattered. I would actually come around and I'd probably
you'd be okay.
Try to promote this thing.
And then we get a totally awesome Smashing Pumpkins song over the end credits that for some reason is not on the soundtrack on Spotify. It's there. You can see it, but it's grayed out.
Ooh, they pulled it. They're like, no, we will not be associated with this piece of shit.
It's either the beginning is the end is the beginning or the end is the beginning is the end because they have two versions of the song. And one of them was from Watchmen and played over the Watchmen trailer. That's one of the best trailers ever. And then the faster, like hard rock version is the one at the end of this movie. And this has been Smashing Pumpkins trivia. Sorry, I'm a Smashing Pumpkins fan. I like them.
No, that's cool. I never really got into Smashing Pumpkins and I never got into the end of this movie because I turned it off just as fast as I could when it was done. So I did not get to enjoy that. What maybe, like you're saying, was maybe one of the best things in this movie.
It truly is. Look it up on YouTube, guys, if you want to hear a good Smashing Pumpkins song. And then listen to the other version that was in the Watchmen trailer because it's more of a slowed down industrial Nine Inch Nails vibe to it, but like the same melody and vocals.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, that was Batman and Robin. Anything about the story you wanted to add before we dive into the production of the movie?
No, I can't wait to hear what this did to these filmmakers.
All right, let's start off with Akiva Goldsman. We've talked about him recently because he was part of the Dark Tower debacle, but this just further is validating my feeling that he's bad at his job and a bad writer. He would follow this up with mostly dog shit. He wrote Lost in Space, practical magic, what I like to call the Tom Hanks in a terrible wig movies, Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, and The Dark Tower. And then he's done some okay stuff. Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man, I Am Legend. Did you hear about this I Am Legend sequel coming out with Michael B. Jordan?
Oh, that sounds fun. I did not hear about that, but I'd watch it.
I didn't hate I Am Legend. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
I checked that out. And then he wrote and directed Winter's Tale, which was a fucking terrible ass movie that bombed, which we'll have to cover one day. That was his only directorial effort, I believe. Let's talk about Joel Schumacher. By the way, everything I learned about Joel Schumacher in the research for this, he seems like a lovely man.
Uh-huh.
You know, he apologizes profusely for this movie, or he did. He sadly passed away in 2020. I mean, he lived to age 80, though, so good long run for him. But he's done some really well-regarded movies. St. Elmo's Fire, The Lost Boys, The Client, Time to Kill. And then he's done some movies that maybe weren't well-received at the time, but have grown in estimation over the years, like Flatliners. Can we drop in a Bill Hader quote from Popstar?
I was about to say Flatliners made only that much better through cinematographer Jan de Bont.
Jan de Bont.
Flatliners, Joel Schumacher film shot by Jan de Bont.
Falling Down, which is a movie I wish did more poorly so we could talk about it on here. Have you seen Falling Down?
If I did, it was so long ago, I don't remember it.
With Michael Douglas, where he plays like a disgruntled man.
I remember the trailer images of him losing his shit in horn-rimmed glasses.
He goes through this odyssey throughout Los Angeles, encountering all these various unsavory characters that he, beats or kills or something. And he's not really the hero of that movie, but people took the wrong lesson from it like they are wont to do. But my friends and I used to call it Upgrade because we would play a drinking game around this movie called Upgrade.
Okay.
Every time he got a better weapon, we would have to chug a beer because he starts off with a briefcase and he hits some kid with it and takes his switchblade.
Oh,
or
shit.
then takes a bat, and then he's got a bat now. And then he hits some kid with his bat and takes his knife. He's got a knife, and then there's a car crash, and he takes a gun from the car that crashed. Now he's got a gun. And then he takes his gun and he trades it for a grenade somehow. And then he ends up with a rocket launcher at the end. It's not a comedy at all, but it's very funny the way he just keeps getting better and better weapons. It's like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
And so every time we would shout Upgrade and chug a beer, which is very juvenile, but it was fun at the time.
I like that. He should have just pasted that plot onto Batman, and Batman could have upgraded weapons throughout the movie.
Or have Batman in Falling Down trying to stop Michael Douglas from going crazy and killing people. Yeah. That's
cool.
The twist at the end. It's happening in Gotham, and Batman just swoops down and hits him in the head real hard.
Let's reboot it.
He also did 8mm, which has developed a bit of a cult following over the years, the Nicolas Cage snuff film movie.
Yeah, I couldn't watch that because I'm horrified of the concept of snuff films, but it always intrigued me.
Had a very good early Joaquin Phoenix performance, actually, before he was a star. He was in that Phone Booth, the Colin Farrell bottle episode of a movie. Wow, that's a good movie, actually. So he made Flawless with Robert De Niro after this, which I've never heard of and flopped. Weird for a Robert De Niro movie around this time that just came and went with no fanfare.
Yeah.
Bad Company, which I do remember seeing in movie theaters, a buddy cop movie with Chris Rock and Anthony Hopkins.
Wow. Do not remember that. That's weird.
Yeah, I saw that in theaters. It was not good, but I haven't watched it since. His slump continued with Veronica Guerin, Phantom of the Opera, The Number 23, which was Jim Carrey's first foray into being a real serious, scary man on film.
Oh.
They all underperformed. His last film would be Trespass, a 2011 film which only got a limited release. Had a pretty good cast, honestly, but it lost a ton of money. And then he did some TV work until he passed away in 2020. So he had some good stuff after this, but it put his career on a bit of a downslope for sure. And he was working with much smaller budgets after this movie.
Yeah, I would say to everybody's credit, and I think we even have to credit Akiva Goldsman.
No.
Everyone in this movie has apologized for it.
Yes.
I read articles with Goldsman apologizing for it. We didn't mean it to come out like that. It was actually going to be okay. And we fucked up. Obviously, Schumacher apologized for it profusely. Clooney is known to refund people's money.
He'll give you your money back.
Yeah.
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 George, if you're listening, I want my $12 or whatever it cost because this movie ruined my birthday.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he owes you a lot. He owes you your innocence. I don't know how he's gonna repay that.
Let me hang out at his house in Lake Como.
Lake Como, yeah.
And
actually, I was thinking the same thing. A nice little summer at the lake house might start to patch things over.
let me go out there with the family and we'll call it even. Yeah, even O'Donnell, I found a quote from him about this movie. He said, I just felt like everything got a little soft the second time. On Batman Forever, I felt like I was making a movie. The second time, I felt like I was making a kid's toy commercial.
Yeah.
Which I take issue with the fact that he felt like he was making a movie on Batman Forever, but everything else, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the writer and director and where they went. Let's talk about the cast. Clooney doesn't need much of an introduction. We all know what he's been up to. But for the immediate aftermath of this, he did The Peacemaker, which wasn't really a good use of his talents. It was trying to be like a serious, gritty, it was a crime movie or like He was more of a fixer, I think, in that movie, and it just didn't work. It wasn't really in his wheelhouse at that point. But then he would go on to make Out of Sight the following year, one of my favorite movies of all time.
That was really what made him, in my mind, too.
It's like the quintessential Clooney performance. It crystallized what would become his on-screen persona from that point on, just like suave, but also a little dangerous. And then he had a pretty good run after that with Three Kings, which is a pretty underrated movie, even though I fucking hate David O. Russell as a person. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And The Perfect Storm. Those three kind of came out in quick succession, and he's racking up leading man credits. And then he gets Ocean's 11 in 2001, and he's, firmly entrenched in the A-list leading man space where he remains to this day. And I just want to shout out Michael Clayton is like a top 5 movie for me of all time.
It's fantastic. You got me to watch it. I had never seen it, and I watched it, and I'm like, oh, you're right. Everyone is right. This movie is amazing.
Another 2007 movie. We got Zodiac, Michael Clayton, No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, Gone Baby Gone. 2007 was an insane year.
That's wild.
For dude movies. And then O'Donnell did some movie work. He was in a movie called The Bachelor, which I only remember for it being lambasted, and something called Vertical Limit. Okay. But he's been staying busy on TV, though. He had a stint on Grey's Anatomy. He did a show called The Company. Okay. He's been on NCIS Los Angeles since 2009.
That's like a retirement gig.
Yeah, steady paycheck, easy hours probably, because they've got it so dialed in at this point.
Yeah. So when you get to CBS, that's like you're fucking cruising. Is that CBS? I assume it is CBS. I don't actually watch those kind of network shows, but that's what I associate.
Whether it is or is not, it is a CBS show. In its heart, that's really where it lives. Alicia Silverstone, we talked about it a little bit. She's been doing steady work in smaller projects. I was shocked when I was watching Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is a very harrowing 2017 indie movie.
I've heard of it.
That's quite good, starring Colin Farrell, to bring it all back around to the Batman. And she had a small role in that. And I was like, oh, she's getting back out there doing good stuff. I've never seen her be like bad in anything like she was in this, so I'm not going to blame her for her performance in this movie so much.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a Schumacher problem.
She was young, and it was too big a hill to climb. If George Clooney couldn't climb that hill, he was fairly young, but he wasn't a kid like she was. I shouldn't call her a kid, but like nobody could climb out of this thing. Uma Thurman did the closest to actually surmounting the...
She was a kid though. She was 21 when she made but she was 20 when she filmed it and 21 when it was released. So yeah, she really was a kid. Chris O'Donnell was 43 when he made this movie, and he still came out looking like shit. So this was kind of the end for Arnold as an A-lister.
Really?
He had problems getting insured after this. I guess he had an injury, like a back injury, and people wouldn't insure him for action movies.
Oh, shit.
And that was kind of his wheelhouse. So he didn't do anything major until End of Days in 1999, which I think is actually a weirdly underrated action horror movie that he was in. I remember enjoying it. I saw it in theaters. I haven't watched it in a while. And then he came back to The Terminator in 2003 for Rise of the Machines, which fucking sucks. And people know what he's been up to since then. He became the governor of California. He's acted here and there. He's, focused on ending gerrymandering, which I guess is good.
Yeah, I support him in that.
That's a noble cause. Yeah, you're a California resident. You don't have to get too into how you felt about him as governor, but I'm sure you have more of a reference point than I do on that.
He's the one who raises miniature horses now too, right? That's kind of his thing.
Is that his thing?
I think
so. Sebastians?
He's got little tiny horses running around on his estate, and he loves them.
What a weird rich guy thing to do. You have so much money, you're just like, what can I do now? Well, tiny horses.
Well, I've got all the cigars in the world. Now, what's next on the list? Oh, tiny horses. Here we go.
Cigars fucking suck, man. I don't like cigars.
They're obnoxious at all times.
You look cool for 20 minutes and then your mouth tastes like an ashtray for 3 days.
Yeah, that cigar sick feeling. I remember that as a teenager trying to be cool, smoking Swisher Sweets. Back when you didn't hollow them out, you actually smoked them.
I smoked a couple Swisher Sweets in my day, but I've hollowed out far more. All right. Now, Ian, it's been a couple weeks. I'm sure everyone's eager to hear your grand summation of your feelings on this film. Do you have anything prepared? And if not, do you feel bad now that I've teed you up and you don't have anything?
I always feel bad, but I do have a little something, and I will ask you to allow me to be the devil's, nay, the Joker's advocate and pose this question. Why the fuck not? Why the fuck not make this movie? Why does Batman have to be good or serious or something that is engrossing to adults who are looking for grown-up stories? Can Batman not just be some C-level kiddie comic book bullshit? And Joel Schumacher, rest his soul, proved that you can do it. You probably shouldn't do it with $160 million or whatever, but you can. And so what? We all survived. We made it this far. We might not make it that much further, but it didn't end the earth back then in the 90s.
So the best thing you can say about this movie is that it did not bring about the apocalypse.
I'm looking for the positives here at all times.
You're looking pretty hard. You searched high and low. Well, thank you, Ian. That was a nice summation. I guess I agree. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the earth, but
Something to cling to.
something. That was Batman and Robin. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're happy to be back. We're going to be back next week with a little bit of March Madness for your ear holes. We're coming in with Blue Chips.
Oh boy.
I feel like we haven't done a movie I really like in a long time, and I fucking love Blue Chips.
I'm about to get dunked on by this movie because I've never seen it.
It's really good, I think. I haven't seen it in a while. But I used to love this fucking movie, and it's just got like a great 90s Nick Nolte performance. It's got all your...
We're bringing Nolte back in the zone. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, we got him in 2 eras. We'll have to go back and find like something from the 70s from him.
Sure.
So we're going to be back with Blue Chips for March Madness to tie into that. And please remember to rate, review, subscribe if you can do that on your podcast listening platform of choice.
Please do.
Friendly reminder, Spotify lets you rate podcasts now, so throw us 5 stars on that and we'll be your best friends forever.
Thank you. Sprinkle us some stars, please.
Sprinkle us some stars, and we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.
Drop it.